fort has had a lot of distinguished visitors over the years, but perhaps the most distinguished was the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. And it was a singular time to see those presidential limousines pull into your driveway and drive up in front, and Hillary comes out, and President Clinton comes out, and they come up to us and talk with us. And boy, you sure have the feeling that you're in the presence of a king. When I started this, and my dad was really down on the idea, I think he would have been so proud to have seen the President of the United States step out of his car and come up and shake our hands and enter our fort and bring his other guests here.
I think the ultimate moment was when the President of the United States chose the fort to host the Summit of Eight, to showcase what the pioneers, how they lived, what life was like in the 1840s.
When everybody thought he was absolutely crazy, he built a mud fort. Some years later, why, the heads of state of 6 or 7 nations were there.
That to me was an ultimate time. I don't know what's going to top that. I came from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I spent a lot of my time there until I was 16 or 17. My parents grew up in Pennsylvania. Peter Arnold came to Philadelphia about 1760, and he married a Dutch woman that he met on the boat. He had come from England, and the boat went to Rotterdam and then across the Atlantic, and he ended up married by the time he got to the shore. So I had both English and Dutch ancestry. That's where I sprang from, and I grew up with a great taste for Pennsylvania Dutch cooking. I love that kind of food. I get big thrills out of sausages, bratwurst and weisswurst and knackwurst and any kind of wurst. I just like them all.
Sam is my brother. He is younger than I am, and so I babysat him for many years. We are very close, being a very close family, and it's been wonderful for me.
I went away to school when I was 16 to Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, and I was there for a couple of years, and then went on to Yale, and I got a degree in English literature in Yale in 1947. And then I came and worked a year in Pittsburgh and decided the West was for me, and so I packed up my car and I moved to Santa Fe. I worked for a radio station. I used to say, "This is KVSF, your CBS station in old Santa Fe." And now we join Arthur Godfrey and his friends, and then I'd flip it over to the net. And radio was pretty interesting, and then I also had a job writing for a Santa Fe newspaper. And then I looked around to see what Santa Fe didn't have, and it was a toy store. So we opened a toy store and didn't know a darn thing about retailing at all. And we learned the hard way for the next 2 years. The "we" was my first wife, Betty. And Betty had come from Georgia, and I had met her during a Yale Glee Club trip to Florida at Rollins College, and we were married in Santa Fe. She flew out, and we were married in the Episcopal Church across from La Posada. And we lived in Santa Fe for 3 years. The toy and hobby shop was not very busy. We'd have whole days where we'd sell nothing. And eventually we started just eating out of the cash register, 50 cents a day for food apiece. We'd go down to Tony's You and I Cafe and have the boiled beef plate. And Georgia O'Keeffe was always eating there right behind us in her big black hat. And she too liked the boiled beef plate at Tony's. But we were very, very frugal with what we had. And then eventually I thought, well, a young man's got to go somewhere where you can make a career. In late 1950, we decided to sell it all out and move to Denver.
My father and mother were going to build an adobe home because they were married in Santa Fe in 1948, and they loved the adobe architecture, and they were also fascinated with Southwestern history.
We were driving past this property, and there was a sign out in front of this big rock, and it said "Ideal Motel Site, Deep Artesian Well." And so I called the fellow, and I bought it from him. We decided to build our house on it, and we were at the library one night looking up adobes and adobe buildings, and there Betty turned open a book, and were the two pictures that Hebert drew, a Lieutenant Hebert in 1845, and these two pictures were of Bent's Fort. And my wife said, "How'd you like to live in something like this?" And I thought that, gee, better be open-minded, and I thought about it and said, let's do it. And that's how it began.